everyone, it's Jennifer from Fiberflux. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, welcome. I'm so glad you're here because today we're going to be learning how to crochet this gorgeous crochet tank. This is the Summer Skies tank, and it's a fun and super easy tank top that you can make. This is a great layering piece. You could wear it in the warmer months by itself or with something under it, and then in the cooler months you could put a little sweater or cardigan over top of it as well. So we're going to learn how to make this step by step and stitch by stitch. So before we get started, be sure and hit that subscribe button to get all the latest Fiberflux video updates. It helps the channel and it supports the channel, and I appreciate it so much. So there's lots of ways to get this pattern. You can get the full written pattern on the Fiberflux blog for free. You can get the full video tutorial here at the channel. Together, we're going to work on this today, step by step and stitch by stitch, like I mentioned before. You can also get the ad-free PDF over at my Ravelry shop and my Etsy shop. And you can also join our Patreon community, and I release the month's patterns in our Fiberflux Gold Pattern Club as well. So we're going to do each part of this. We're going to do two squares seamed together to make like a tube. Then we're going to add straps to the top, and then we're going to add, if we turn our tank top, you can see there's a little split in the side. Actually, let me lift that up a little. You can see there's a little split in the side here, and it adds a lovely extension and gives a little bit of ease, like when you sit down. It gives some room, like when you sit down and bend around and move around as well. So let's get started, and we're going to learn how to make this gorgeous tank top. Okay, let's talk about sizing of our tank a little bit. Later on in the video, we're going to learn how to really customize this. So basically, we have two solid granny squares, and then I have added a little bit of an extension here with a split just to give it some comfort. You know, when you sit down or move around, it'll kind of give a little bit. So this has an extension, and you can really make this square as many rounds as you want it to be. You can make it mini sized for a doll, and you can make it as large as you need it to be. So the square will determine some of the height from the top here to the bottom, but also the circumference as it goes around you. And then we are going to add a little bit of length, which is totally optional. If you want it to be a little shorter or even a cropped look, you can omit this part. But I've added a little bit of an extension here by adding some rows back and forth on the front and some rows back and forth on the bottom. Now, the square that's shown here, again, you can make this any size you want, but the square that's shown here is 15 inches across and 15 inches tall. Now, this bottom extension adds another couple of inches depending on how long you want it to be. And then the straps, I've crocheted them onto the square, and then we sewed them. So these were really custom fit also. But let me just give you some measurements. So if we open up the strap a little bit, I have my tape measure here. Let's see, if we start here and go all the way across, we're getting about 11 inches on that. And again, the square is 15 inches wide, 15 inches tall. And then this bottom part, I've done 4 rows, and we'll talk about all this in a lot more detail. But if we start at the split where it begins here and just measure straight down, that's adding another 2 inches or so to the bottom, okay? So let's jump in. We're going to talk about supplies next, and as we move through the video for each part, part 1 will be the square, making of the square, changing colors. Part 2, we're going to learn how to do the straps. Part 3, we're going to learn how to extend the bottom. And as we do each part of this, we're going to learn how to keep it customizable. So I'm going to talk about that as we do each part as well. So let's talk about supplies next. For this project, you'll need a pair of scissors, a tapestry needle. A tape measure is going to be super helpful to get the exact measurements you need. We're basically, like I mentioned before, going to be sandwiching 2 granny squares together, adding a bottom to make it a little longer, and then adding some straps. So measuring things like straps and the squares, etc., will give you the best fit and help you along with that. We're going to be using a 4.5 millimeter crochet hook, and then as an option, not totally necessary, but this helps with the placement of straps, some stitch markers. Now, if you don't have stitch markers, you could use a piece of extra yarn, just tie a little piece of yarn off to mark it. But when we go to do the straps, stitch markers are really good to like place on there so you know exactly where to go on both sides with the straps. Now let's talk about this yarn. This yarn is called Olivin from Hobie, and it is a cotton linen blend. So it's a really nice yarn. Has a beautiful soft feel, lovely heathered, very wearable colors. And I thought it would be perfect for our tank top that we're going to be making. So I have 5 balls of this, and this is a total of 683 yards of a number 2 fine yarn, okay? So we're going to be doing 2 squares in all of the colors, and then I did, so these are going to kind of be our accent colors, the purple and the green, and then I chose blue as the main colors because we're going to do the straps in the blue and the bottom edge, the elongated part at the bottom in blue, and we're going to be incorporating the blue throughout the square as well, so that, you know, it kind of all anchors it together, okay? And then there'll be little bits of purple and green throughout our squares as well, okay? So 680 yards total of a number 2 fine yarn. If you'd like to replicate the color palette I have here, I'll be using 3 balls of number 11 sky blue and 1 ball of number 15 sage and 1 ball of number 10 purple. Now you can really use any colors you like. I thought this would be a really nice palette of summery colors for us. Okay, so like I mentioned before, we're going to make 2 squares. We're going to make 2 exact squares, later seam them together and construct our tank top. I'm going to start with the blue, and we're going to work on the beginnings of our square together. So what we want to do is grab your yarn, and we're going to create a ring that we'll work our stitches into. So wrap the yarn around your fingers to make a loop. Bring the yarn behind the loop, reach in with your hook, bring up a loop, and tighten. Then we're going to do a chain 4. To make a chain, and I'm going to come in a little bit more so you can see. To make a chain, wrap the yarn around the hook and bring it through the loop. That's 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then we're going to join in the farthest chain from our hook to create a ring. So insert the hook into that farthest chain, bring up a loop again. Now bring that loop through the loop that's already on your hook. And now we have the ring that we're going to work our stitches into. As a side note, if you prefer the magic ring to doing a starting chain like this, feel free to do that. That's totally fine, whatever you prefer. Next, we're going to chain 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we're going to work 3 double crochet into the center of the ring. So to make a double crochet, wrap the yarn around the hook, insert the hook into the center of the ring, and bring up a loop. Wrap yarn around hook, bring it through the first 2 loops, wrap yarn around hook, bring it through the last 2 loops. Also, I didn't mention this before, but I'm holding the tail along the edge of my ring so we can weave it in as we go along, okay? So that was 1 double crochet, but we need 3. So 1 and 2 and 3, okay? Then we're going to chain 2, 1, 2. Then we're going to work 3 more double crochets into the center of the ring. So 1, 2, and 3. We're making a tiny little square right now. Then we're going to chain 2, 1, 2, and then we're going to work 3 double crochets into the center of the ring again. So 1, 2, and 3. And then we're going to chain 2. And then we're going to work 2 more double crochets into the center of the ring. So 1 and 2. Now, do you remember that chain 5 we did at the beginning of the round? Part of that is the first 3 chains of that, to be exact, count as a double crochet. So that's why we only did 2 double crochets here. And then the other 2 count as those chain 2s that we did in between each of these groupings, okay? So count 3 chains up, 1, 2, 3, and join with a slip stitch to close. Insert the hook into that 3rd chain up, bring up a loop, and then bring that loop through the loop already on your hook. And it looks just like the other groupings that we did, okay? So you have a tiny little square. Okay, let's move on to round 2. We're going to stick with the same color for round 2. So what we want to do is, our hook is almost in the right spot. We're going to slip stitch over to this first chain space. These chain spaces here are the corners. So slip stitch over to that first corner, insert the hook into that space, bring up a loop, bring that loop through the loop that's already on your hook, and now your hook is in the right spot. All right, now our hook is in the right place and we can start round 2. So what we want to do is chain 5 again, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and then we're going to work 2 double crochet into this corner space, okay? So double crochet and then double crochet. Then we're going to start working the sides of our square. So we're going to work a double crochet in each of these next 3 stitches. You can see 1, 2, 3. We're going to work a double crochet in each of those 3 stitches. So double crochet in the next stitch, and double crochet into the next stitch. Now we're at a corner again. So in this corner space, what we're going to do is spin this around and we're going to work in that corner space 2 double crochet, 1 and 2, then chain 2, 1, 2, and then 2 more double crochet in that same space. So 1 and 2. Okay, and that's how all these corners are going to be worked, except for when we start off. The first corners worked a little bit differently because we're starting the round, but each of the other corners will be worked the same way. Okay, and also the sides will be worked the same way. So work a double crochet in each of the next 3 stitches. So double crochet, double crochet, double crochet. Work your corner the same way. 2 double crochet, 1 and 2. Chain 2 and 2 double crochet in that same corner space. So 1 and 2. All right, work your side the same way. Now if you notice, I'm kind of sliding this stitch over because that very first stitch that you see sometimes gets a little buried by working these corner stitches. So work a double crochet in each of the next 3 stitches. Double crochet, double crochet, double crochet. And then we're at a corner again. So work 2 double crochet in that corner space, 1 and 2, chain 2, and 2 double crochet in that same corner space, 1 and 2. All right, once again, we're going to work a double crochet in each of these next 3 stitches, 1, 2, and 3. This one might be a little snug because it's the beginning of the round. And then what you're going to do is work a double crochet into this corner space. See, remember this is the chain 5 where we began. So work a double crochet into that corner space before you get to that again. And then, like we did for the previous round, we're going to count 3 chains up. 1, 2, 3, and work a slip stitch into that 3rd chain up to close the round. Because remember that chain 5 counted as a double crochet for those first 3 chains and then 2 double crochet to create that corner. So it really blends, okay? So round 2 is complete. So you can kind of sharpen up those corners. Okay, we're going to move on to round 3, but first we're going to switch colors and learn round 3 at the same time. So what we want to do is cut the yarn. And we're just going to wrap the yarn around the hook and bring it through the loop to close the round, okay? And then we're going to go back in with our hook into that same stitch where we left off, and we're going to hook the new yarn on. And we're going to do 2 rounds of each color. Now you can switch it up if you want to stick with the same color or do thicker stripes or what have you. You can change colors as often as you want to. There's no set rule for that, but I'm going to do 2 rounds of each color just to mix up the colors a little. And what we're going to do is get these little tails out of the way for now. And you can kind of hold them along the edge as you work, and that will weave that in as you go along. And then what we're going to do is go back in with our hook in that same stitch. We're going to bring up a loop. Okay, we also need to slip stitch into this corner space. Our hook is not quite where we want it to be. We need it to be in the corner space. So go ahead and work a slip stitch into that corner space. Insert the hook, bring up a loop here. And now we're ready to begin the round. So what we want to do is chain 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we're going to work 2 double crochets in the same corner space. So 1 and 2, okay? Now you're going to see this is pretty much identical to round 2. We're just going to kind of go through it because as we build our square larger, it's going to have more side stitches, okay? So what we want to do is work a double crochet into each one of these side stitches all the way across. And then when you come to this last one, just go ahead and work your double crochet into that last stitch. And then once again, we're going to work the corners the same way. So we want to go 2 double crochet into that corner space, 1 and 2, chain 2, and 2 double crochet, just like that. Okay? And you can see how as we go, it's going to be more side spaces, okay? So you're just going to continue the round the same way all the way around. So work a double crochet into each side space. Then we'll work our corners the same. So 2 double crochet, 1, 2, chain 2, and 2 double crochet, 1 and 2, and you'll just do this all the way around. So now we're back at a side, so you'll work double crochets in each one of these stitches across, okay? So just do this all the way around, repeating this sequence, and when we get towards the end of this round, we'll rejoin, and I'll show you how to finish off the round. It's the same as round 2, but I'll show you how to do it for round 3. Okay, just coming up to the end of the round here. Working in those last stitches. And then what we'll do is the same thing we did for round 2. Work a double crochet into that corner space. And then we're going to slip stitch join in that 3rd chain up. So 1, 2, 3, and work a slip stitch to close the round, okay? So our round 3 is complete and it looks very pretty. Okay, so like I mentioned before, I'm going to do 2 rounds of each color. So I'm going to continue with the purple for the next round, and then we'll switch to the green and then go back to the blue again, okay? So the next thing we want to do is just keep repeating round 3 over and over and over again like we did. The only thing that will change is you'll have more side spaces, okay? Or side stitches, excuse me. So you'll have more side stitches, and your square is going to start growing, okay? Now, every time I do a round, I like to kind of sharpen up my corners. But however you want to change up the colors as well with your colors that you're using. And then when we rejoin, we're going to have a much larger square. Now, the square, when you're sizing it to yourself, should be able to comfortably wrap around the front of you halfway, because we're going to make the second square and seam it together and sandwich it, okay? So we're going to be creating basically a tube, and later we'll add straps and extend the bottom and things like that. But for now, we're going to just focus on making our square big enough to wrap halfway around you, and then we're going to make an identical square that will wrap around the back, okay? So keep going with your square. Just keep repeating round 3 over and over and over again. If you need to rewatch any parts of it, you can go back and do that. There's also a slow motion feature on YouTube that you can use. So keep repeating round 3. We'll rejoin in just a minute. I'll give you some measurements, but this is definitely a project that's going to be custom to each person. But I'll give you some measurements and let you know how many rounds that I did. So keep repeating round 3 and we'll rejoin in just a minute. Okay, we're coming up to the end of our square, and I'm just working those last couple of stitches. And here's our last stitch. So what we're going to do is just join to close the round in that top chain here, 3rd chain up with a slip stitch. And our square is complete. So what we want to do is cut the yarn now and fasten off, okay? So wrap the yarn around the hook and pull it through the loop and just fasten off. So let's just go through what we have here. Now I did 2 rounds of each color. I started with the aqua, and then I did 2 rounds of purple, 2 rounds of green, and then repeated aqua, purple, green. And then I did 2 more rounds of aqua to keep in the same sequence, but I did 1 more round of aqua just to make the square a tiny bit bigger, but also I'm going to do the bottom edge in aqua and the straps in the aqua too. I have a little bit more of that. We talked about that a little bit earlier in the video. So I wanted to kind of make it mimic that. So what we want to do now is we want to do a little bit of finish work. So I'm going to just zoom out a little bit here because we're going to flip our squares over. Now, You may have woven in the ends as you went along like I did. So we're going to have two types of ends here. We're going to have the ones that we wove in as we went along, which all we need to do for those is to give them a little bit of a tug and trim. And anywhere you see those, just give them a little bit of a tug and then trim those ends. Now the other type of end that you may have, let's find one, is here where we ended up. These are the kind you have to weave in. So just grab your tapestry needle and thread it, and then just stay, if you have an aqua tail, just stay in the aqua or whatever color you have, but just stay in that same color area so your tail will blend. And what I like to do is go in one direction and then come back in the other direction with my tail, okay? And then you can just give your tail a little snip with your scissors and just trim that off, okay? So repeat for the rest of your tails on both squares, and the next thing we're gonna do is seam them together. And also wanted to mention really quick too, our squares are each 15 inches by 15 inches, and they do have quite a bit of stretch to them, so they'll give a little bit as you wear them as well. Okay, so once we've woven in all of our ends, what we're gonna do is make sure before you continue that your squares are identical, that you have the same number of rounds and that everything is the same, okay? Now, we're gonna have, think about our squares now as the public and the kind of the outward facing side of the square and then the inside of the square, okay? So the public side or the outside or the right side, whatever you wanna call it, there's all different terms for it, is the side that faced you while you completed each round. It looks very different. So here is, the right side, here is what, you know, it's called the wrong side or the inside. So what you want to do, we're going to seam these together now because we're going to make a tube, okay? So you want to lay your squares so they're facing each other so that the two back side or the inside of the square is showing now, okay? And what we're going to do is we're going to seam down both sides, okay? So just line them up nice and neat and grab your tapestry needle. And we're going to grab a piece of yarn. We're going to use this aqua yarn for a couple things now, but grab a piece of yarn, I would say about 24 inches long, give or take. You can always tie a new piece on if it's not long enough. I don't like it to be too long because then you're like pulling it through and pulling it through. So thread your tapestry needle with a tail, and we're going to line up the corners here. And we're going to do our first stitch in the corner space. We're going to go up the side here and then we'll go up the other side, okay? So go into those corner spaces and we're going to pull the yarn almost all the way through and we're going to tie it securely, okay? So go ahead and tie it. You want it to be nice and secure because this is something you'll be wearing, okay? Now you're going to line your squares up. And what we're going to do is stitch for stitch. We're going to put a stitch in each one. We're going to do a whip stitch. And all the whip stitches, if you're not familiar, is sort of like a spiral through your work all the way across. It's very invisible. And we're using the same color as that last round. So if your last round was green, for example, you want to use a piece of green yarn, okay? So hold your edges nice and neat. And you're going to go into that first stitch of this bottom layer here. Make sure you get both loops and the first stitch of the top layer, okay? So make sure you get both loops of each layer and then do your first stitch, okay? We're gonna worry about this tail later, okay? Now, go into the next stitch. Go through both layers. And we're gonna go about an inch or so inward and then we're gonna check our seam just to make sure it looks nice. Okay, so I've come about an inch or so and I'm just gonna take it, flip it around and give it just a quick peek, make sure everything looks nice and neat, okay? And it looks pretty good. All right, so I'm just gonna continue across with my whip stitch. All right, we've come up to the end and we're just going to go back into the corner space and just put a couple stitches in there. I like to kind of come around this bend here, just because when you do two rounded square edges together, it'll kind of have a dip in it when you open it back up. So if you come around that edge a little bit more, you can try to minimize that look, okay? So when you're done, take your needle, send it through one more time and pull it almost all the way through. If you have some twisting, that's okay. That happens sometimes when you're seaming. But send it through that loop and just pull it down to tighten. And I like to just do it one more time just to give it a little extra security there. And then, whoops, while it's still threaded, now I pulled mine out by accident. While it's still threaded on there, you can just weave that end in right then and there, because it's already in the right spot and it's the same color. So go in one direction, you can come back in the other direction to lock that tail into place and give it a snip. Okay? Now we can kind of open it up here and check our handiwork. This is looking really good, okay? Actually, you'll probably want to see it opened up here. It looks really fun. Okay, so let's close our little book back up. It's kind of shaped like a crochet book. And now we're going to do the other side, okay? So we seamed this side. Now we're going to seam this side, okay? So repeat for the other side. Okay, we're just coming up to the end here again for this second side that we've been doing. And again, just come around that edge, around that rounded part, just so it goes a little straighter across when you open it back up, okay? So once again, when you're ready to be done, make that last stitch, pull it almost all the way through, send your needle through that loop, and then just repeat one more time just for extra measure, or for good measure, for extra security. And then you can take your needle and just weave that end in. So just, now I put my hand behind this, so I'm not going into both layers with my tail, okay? But go into it with one direction, come back in the other direction, just like that. Give it a snip. And now we're ready to open it up. Now we just had two little ends here, so I'm just going to take care of those really quick. We have one down here at one end. Now again, put your hand behind there so that you're not going to weave it into both layers, because that will sew it together. But just weave that little end in real quick. Or any ends that you see, you can kind of double check it before we move on to the next part. And let's flip this over. We have one tail here. And I think I saw another one, but we'll look in just a minute. So go ahead and just put your hand back there as reinforcement. Take your end. All right, and just give that a snip once you're done. Double check for any other ends that remain. Here is one actually that we missed. That was when we wove in as we went along. We can just give that a snip. Okay, so now we have a tube. So the next thing I want to do, and let me just back up a little bit. The next thing you'll want to do is to turn this right side out. Remember, it was inside out. So now we have a tube, and you can kind of just stretch this out. This is going to be the main part of our tank top. You can kind of stretch that seam out. Not stretch it out, but just straighten it out, rather, I should say. Okay, so just straighten everything out. Now, the next thing we're going to do, at this point too, you can try it on, or the person that you're making it for, they can try it on. But at this point, we're going to determine next where our straps are. Our straps are going to go up here. We're going to make them fairly wide so they're nice and comfortable. But we're going to put two here and just start here in our stitches and just make long rectangles, and then we're going to seam them around the back side, okay? So what you'll want to do for this next part is to grab some stitch markers. Now I like to take a contrasting color just so I can see them really well, and you'll want 4 of them, because now I'm going to go with this orange color because it really stands out against this aqua color. But what you'll want to do is you'll want 2 for one strap where you start and end, and 2 for the other strap where you start and end. Okay, so what I did was went ahead and put some stitch markers in here. This is going to be one strap, and this is going to be another strap. So we want to make sure they're even. Now there's a really easy way to do this. All I did was go back to, remember we made this square and we had a corner space. So you'll want to go back to the corner space, and I counted 13 stitches across and I placed a stitch marker. I did the same thing on the other side. Find the corner space, count 13 stitches across, and place a stitch marker, okay? Now, that's going to determine where the strap starts over here. Okay, so this is the underarm area. This will be the strap, okay? Now, for the second stitch marker on both of these sides, this is going to be the width of the strap. So in between each of these stitch markers, not including the stitch that are stitch markers stitched into, but in between is 5 stitches, okay? And same with this side. Now, if you want your straps to be thinner, just put less stitches in between. If you want them to be much wider, put more stitches in between. Super easy. But the way I got these counts is I pop this on to my dress form, which I use as my guide when I make things. You can pop it on yourself, you can pop it on a person, whatever you want to do. But I put mine on my dress form just to see, because that's where I usually put my items on when I take pictures of them for the blog. So I put that on, I saw kind of where it hit, and I liked the placement. You can move these stitch markers around all you want, but just make sure that no matter where you place them, they're going to be the same on both sides. So the same number of stitches here and here, the same number of stitches between here and here, okay? So just make sure they're even no matter where you place them. Now, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to start stitching our straps. We're going to make some long rectangles, and then the next part is we will flip this over, bring the straps around, and stitch them to the back, okay? So our straps will be very easy. We're just going to use the same stitches and they'll look the same, okay? It'll look nice and uniform and kind of continue the look of our tank top. So what you want to do is grab, now let me grab my yarn ball here. The yarn's all over the place. What you want to do is grab a piece of yarn from your yarn ball. You don't want to cut it or anything. And what we're going to do is leave your stitch markers in place for right now. So we're going to start with our first strap, and let me just come way. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to just spin this around because we're going to go into the inside. So flip it around and kind of like fold it over a little bit and grab your yarn that's attached to your yarn ball from before. We're doing the same color, okay? So here's our stitch marker. You can see we have marked them for our strap. Now, where this first stitch marker is, we can remove that, but just remember where that is. We're going to go in with our hook where that stitch marker was. We're going to hook the new yarn on, bring up a loop, and go ahead and tie that yarn right on there, okay? So we're going to have some ends later, but that's okay. So what we want to do now is go back into that same stitch, bring up a loop, and we're going to chain 3. 1, 2, 3, okay? Now, we're going to go into the next stitch. So that counted as a double crochet as a side note. We're going to go into the next stitch and work a double crochet. Next stitch, double crochet. Next stitch, double crochet. Next stitch, double crochet. We're just doing this all the way across until we get to this other stitch marker, okay? So here we are at the second stitch marker for our strap. You can go ahead and take that stitch marker out and work a double crochet into that stitch as well. We now have the beginnings of our strap, okay? So what we want to do now is once again chain 3. 1, 2, 3, and these straps will go pretty quick because of these double crochets. Okay, this chain 3 counts as a double crochet once again. So in that next stitch, work a double crochet, next stitch, double crochet, next stitch, double crochet, next stitch, double crochet. So remember, for our square, we worked in rounds. For our straps, we're going to work in rows. Okay, next stitch, double crochet. All right, when you get to the end, you're going to see that turning chain. Work a double crochet in that topmost chain of the turning chain from the previous row. Okay, so you're just going to repeat this row. So what that means is you'll just want to repeat row 2, the row we just did, over and over and over again until your strap goes comfortably around your shoulder and back over. Now, you can grab a measuring tape and measure where the top of this goes and hold it up to your shoulder and wrap it around. Now I'm going to keep crocheting and I'm going to give you some measurements in just a minute so you can see what I came up with. But you're just going to repeat this row 2 of your strap over and over and over again until your strap is a comfortable length, okay? So I'm going to keep crocheting, and when we return, I'll give you some measurements and kind of show you what I mean. All right, just working these last 2 stitches of our strap here. And I want to just take a quick little measurement just to give you an idea. Now, again, we talked about this earlier, and you can really customize this by just working more or less rows for your strap. But I just want to give you an idea of what I have here. So if we start here at the end and we go down to the base, it's about, let's see, let me just straighten it out a little bit. It's about 11 inches. Now, there is some stretch to it. So as you can see here, if you stretch it, it'll go up to almost 12 inches, okay? So just keep that in mind as you make your strap, that it will stretch. And when it wraps around and, you know, this bottom part that's a little heavier than the strap, it kind of will pull a little bit and give it a natural stretch as well, okay? So let's attach this now. Now I already did the other side, so you'll repeat for the other side. So what we're gonna do, I'm gonna put my hook back in here and we're gonna cut, I don't know, about 12 inches or so. And then grab your tapestry needle and we're gonna wrap the yarn around our hook and bring it through. So we're gonna fasten off. And now, this is the front of our tank. So you can see, if we spin it around here, this is the front, and you can see that there's two straps. Now I'm going to come back in so you can see better. So what we're going to do is flip this over to the back because we're going to sew it. And we're going to also turn it inside out. So bring it through here. We're just going on the inside part here. Just going to flip this around. All right, so now it's inside out. I wanted to show you the right side out way first, just so you could have a sense of where we're at here. All right, so it's inside out. Now we're going to count the same number of stitches. Now let me just thread my needle. We're going to count the same number of stitches over from where we started before. So how we did that was we located the corner space, and then we counted 13 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Same as when we did this distance here, okay? So this stitch here, I'm going to mark it with my stitch marker just so I know. Okay, now you may notice that our tail is at the opposite end of where we need to sew over here, okay? That's no problem. What you can do is just weave in that tail. Just kind of weave it through. Very easy. And now our needle is in the right spot. Okay, no big deal. All right, so what you're gonna do is you're gonna take that stitch that you marked and you're gonna take this. Now it could be a stitch at one end, it could be a turning chain, whatever it is. If it's the turning chain, go to that topmost chain. If it's the stitch at the other end, just go in the stitch at the top there, okay? So mine happens to be a turning chain, so I'm going to go in there and just kind of catch it. And then we're going to take this stitch marker out, just mark it, don't drop it because you'll forget which one it is, but go into that stitch. And this is inside out, again, just wanted to remind you that. And we're going to just whip stitch it the same way we did the sides here, okay? So we're going to go through both layers and both stitches. Now when we go through both stitches, remember we're picking up both of these loops. If you only pick up one loop, it's going to pull it. It's going to pull that loop out. And you don't want to do that. It could distort things. So you're just going to try and pick up both of those loops. And this is just a couple of stitches. We're just going straight across here with our strap. And again, you could make it as long or as short as you want. Depending on the size that you need for your shoulders. And here we are. And I'm just going to put one kind of off to the side a little bit, kind of how we did when we made our tube down here, okay? So go in that last stitch and then pull it almost all the way through and send it through that loop. Just like that. And I like to do that just one more time, send it through that loop. And now while we have this threaded, what we're going to do is we're going to weave in this end while it's already threaded onto our needle, okay? So just weave that in. I like to go in one direction and then bring it back in the other direction, just like that. And then just give that a little snip, okay? All right, now our straps are on, and what we're going to do is we're going to put it, well, let me just zoom out so you can see what we're doing here. I'm going to make this right side out. Okay. Now, you can, let me just straighten this out so it looks Nice and neat. Okay, now you can wear it at this point if you want to. Okay, if you want a more, I would say this hits above the hip a little bit, or some, depending on your height, might be a little cropped, might hit right above the hip. We're going to add an extension onto this, so that'll give you the option to lengthen it if you want to. Okay, so here's the bottom of our tank top, and remember we had 2 squares. Okay, so we're going to grab our yarn and our hook once again, and we're going to take our tank top and we're going to swivel it around. Okay, so now we want to go down to the bottom corner, so go to the bottom right here, okay, where your square is. Just as a side note, if you see a little end pop out like this, it's no big deal. Just give it a little trim. That happens sometimes. We've used lots of stripes here. Okay, so let's zoom in now so we can see what we have. All right, so we're going to look at the anatomy of our square a little bit, even though it's seamed and everything. We're going to tie our yarn into this corner space. We're going to start at the corner space, hook the new yarn on, bring it through, and then just tie it right on there, okay? I have a little bit of yarn left. I have some more blue too, just in case, but. All right, so then we're gonna go back into that corner space. So you're gonna begin at the corner space. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna work a couple rows back and forth, because it's gonna kind of make a flap. If you put a split at the bottom here, it'll give you a little bit of ease, a little bit of comfort when you sit down. It won't feel like you're wearing a tube and it's like, you know, restricting you. It'll kind of give a little bit when you sit down or move or bend, okay? So we're going to bring the new yarn through, bring up a loop, and we're going to chain 3. We're going to stick with these double crochet stitches, okay? So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go into this first stitch that we see. Now it might be, because it's a corner and it's been seamed, it might be a little bit tricky to see, but that's okay. Just do the best you can. We're going to work a double crochet into that first stitch, double crochet into the next stitch, double crochet into the next stitch, and so forth, okay? We're going to work a double crochet in each stitch all the way across until we get to the corner space on this side, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and work a double crochet in each stitch across here, and then when we rejoin, I'll show you how to kind of finish up this row and move on to the next row. The next row is the row you'll repeat for as long as you want your extension to be, okay? So let's work our double crochet stitches all the way across, and when we get towards the end, I'll show you how to finish off this row and move on to the next row, okay? Okay, we're just coming up to the end of the row here. And you're just going to work those last few stitches. We're approaching the corner space, okay? So just kind of look for it a little bit. And then just go right into that corner space, work your last double crochet, okay? So you can see we have the beginnings of the front flap, if you will, okay? So let's work the second row, and then you can kind of go off on your own and make it as long as you want, okay? So what you're going to do for the next row is chain 3. And then we're going to turn our work, and you're going to work a double. So this chain 3 counts as a double crochet. So you're going to go in that next stitch, not the hole or the stitch at the base of this chain, but the next one, okay? Because that counts as a double crochet. And you're going to go work a double crochet in the next stitch, double crochet in the next stitch, double crochet into the next stitch, and so forth, until you get to the end of this row. Now let's work across this row. I'll show you how to finish off this row, and then we can kind of go on our own and make this part as long as we want. You could make it like a tunic. You could just add a little bit, just to add a little bit of length. It's completely up to you. All right, coming up to the end of this second row here, and we're just working our double crochets in each stitch. But then when you come to the turning chain, what you're going to do is you're going to work a double crochet in the topmost chain of that turning chain as well, okay? So let's look at this for just a minute. We're going to flip our top over here. Now you can see here that the bottom in the front or the back, it's the same. The front and back is the same in this piece, but you can see how it has extended a little bit. So at this point, it's really up to you how long you want it to be. I think I'm going to work a couple of more rows of mine. I found an end, I'm just trimming off. I'm going to work a couple more rows of mine, and you can see the side view when you go to wear it, how That's just a nice little detail that you have. I'm going to keep going and make mine another row or two. And then you're going to, when you're done with the one side, what you'll do is you'll completely flip your top over and you'll do the exact same thing on the back, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and do that with my front and back, and I just wanted to, again, show you that nice detailing, how nice that looks. Make mine a little bit longer. But when we come back, we'll just kind of do some finish work and look at what we've done. Okay, just coming up to the end here, working that last stitch. Then we're just going to cut our yarn, fasten off, just pull that loop through. And now we just have some ends to take care of. So let me just scoot everything out of the way. We're going to grab our tapestry needle. Just as a side note, you can see how we've done the extension here. I did a total of 4 rows, 1, 2, 3, and 4 for here. And it's looking pretty good. It gave us a little more length. Now you can go a little bit longer if you prefer. If you want your tank top to be a little bit longer, that's okay. But I'm going to wrap this up because I really am liking the length. So what we want to do next is turn the tank top inside out. And then we're just going to weave in the ends. Now, whenever you have a project with lots of different colors, what you'll want to do is just stay in those same color areas, okay? So I have this aqua here. I'm going to take this tail and just go in one direction in the aqua section only. That way the end will kind of disappear. Go in one direction, come back in the other direction. And then we're just going to take some scissors and give it a little snip. And you're just going to repeat that for all the ends. Now we did some weaving of ends for the squares, so it shouldn't be too many of them, but we'll just go through here and weave in some of the ends. Okay, once all the ends have been woven in, then we can flip this right side out. So everything is complete, it looks great, and it's ready to wear. So that is how you crochet the Summer Skies Granny Tank. Thanks so much for watching, and be sure and click the subscribe button to get all the latest Fiber Flux video updates. Thanks again!